dias, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you might reside in the world. You're now watching the Golden Road TV show. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, broadcasting live and around the world. Currently on YouTube, but soon to migrate to a different platform that we're actually in the process of engineering. You know, we live in such an age where media is such a powerful tool, but if those tools are edited or censored or the narrative is controlled, then it starts to be a vehicle of propaganda as opposed to just education. So welcome to the show. Again, I'm your host, Michael DiMartino. The Golden Road is dedicated to bridging the past with today for a better tomorrow. We're broadcasting live here from the Nevada County Resilience and Innovation Hub. And we have a great show for you. We have some of our Steady Freddy regulars who are on the show tonight, including Davin Infinity for Arts and Culture, Dennis from the House of Mcfadden, talking about peace and... Was that okay? Okay. Talking about peace and justice. Steve Nathan with Strategic Campaigns. And my first guest from Phi Institute will be talking about indigenous medicine. Welcome to the show, Mr. Douglas D. Becker. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me be here.
I want to thank your mother for letting you be here.
Oh, thanks.
We got to go back to the root of it all, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, in the short time that we have, I wanted to kind of share something that's kind of the basis of indigenous systems all over the world. Yeah, and this is based on thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, more even, of witnessing with their own senses what's happening in their space. So we have the sun, and we have the moon, we have the sky, and the movement of those two forces, the heat of the sun, the coolness of the moon, have been used for explaining different processes and categorizing different energies that we experience in our life. And so,
wait a minute. I got to take a moment just to ingest what you just said.
Okay.
So literally, the planets, the elements, the cycles of nature all play into our health.
Yeah, but primarily the solar and the lunar forces.
Okay.
All right. We have three major nerves systems of nerves come off of each of those three. All right. In the Tibetan tradition, we say 24,000 on each one, which makes 72,000 nerves. And these nerves are representatives of different mental emotional states. Right. So there's at least 72,000, some say 84,000 mental emotional states. And they all can be divided.
I saw at least 20,000 this morning as I walked through downtown Grass Valley. So that's probably fairly accurate.
So they're divided between three basic mental emotional sets. And we talked about this before, the mental emotional idea. There's kind of delusion, ignorance, depression is more with the cool force, like from the moon. And then there's the heat of anger and aggression, and that's the heat from the sun. And then the sky is this idea of like desire and attachment, actually. And so, in a physiological explanation, this is what I want to get to, is that it's very simple understanding what they call anabolic and catabolic forces. Catabolic forces, also known as dysaerobic forces in the body, or dominance in the body, is when there's a lot of free radical oxidation, and there's a lot of what traditionally they call fire in the system. Anabolic is the opposite. Anabolic is more the lunar forces, and that's more anaerobic activity or anaerobic dominance in the body. If you can see the pattern of what it's more like anabolic or cat, you can kind of figure out if you're more hot or more cold, or vice versa. Knowing that, then you can make huge impacts on the dominant imbalance in the system by adding really specific types of fats. And this is the work of Emmanuel Ravici, who was the pioneer in lipid cell membrane research. And it corresponds directly and parallels with indigenous knowledge, meaning that if you eat a lot of butter or coconut oil or sterile containing fats, for a long enough period of time, you're going to turn off Yeah, you're going to be kind of cold and off. You won't really wake up good in the morning. You won't have much energy. You'll tend to be more constipated. You'll tend to not pee that much.
So very interesting. Just to rewind, I have a very novice level of understanding and experience with holistic health. Spirit, mind, body health. How they have to be kind of like a pyramid. They have to work in balance with each other. If you're spiritually advanced but you're not emotionally grounded, problems. Same thing. If you spend all day in the gym working out and you have a great physical strength and stamina, but your intellect or your emotional body or spiritual body is not developed. So what I'm hearing you say is very much in Western medicine, they talk about fat bad. Mm-hmm. So can you just elaborate a little bit before we go on about fat and why are you saying fat is good?
Yeah. So this is a very very fundamental, basic thing. People eat food. They like to eat food. They know their food, and if you look at the fats, you'll immediately know what's happening in terms of the movement and mobilization of water and oxygen in your system. Oh. All right. So I was talking about anabolic before. That's the lunar. The solar or the hot, it would be all the essential fatty acids. So a lot of people promote essential fatty acids for health, but actually that increases a hot condition. So for, say, maybe a standard American diet where they're very much anaerobic and anabolic, the essential fatty acids really help initially. But if you do too much, then you become out of balance and now you're too fiery, you can't turn off, you can't go to sleep, you tend to have looser stools. And so a lot of people, instead of, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the issues can be really simple by supporting the body's dominant fat imbalance. Yeah, if somebody has, for instance, they have loose stools, they can't go to sleep, they just go, that might not seem like a problem because they won't really have colds or flus. And they'll have a lot of energy until they burn out every now and then. And those people, for instance, are more susceptible to bacterial infections because of the cell membrane and how it works. I don't want to get too deep into that, but basically, if you can figure out the pattern between cold and hot and understand that, then you can really easily introduce very simple things, not even herbs or any of that. You can just look at how are you increasing your level of essential fatty acids or increasing your level of sterile fats. Both are needed in the body. And so you can't just do seeds and nuts and all that all the time, because that's increasing. Anything that has an oil that's liquid in room temperature is going to make you hotter and hotter and hotter and increase free radical oxidation, which you need, although it's been demonized, you need a lot of free radical oxidation actually to stay alive. But if you get too much, it's really dangerous. In the same level, if you say you're really fanatic about coconut oil, because you heard coconut oil is good for you, so you eat a bunch of coconut oil over and over again, eventually you're going to start turning yourself off. And so there's a natural circadian rhythm that Emanuele Ravici discovered and ancient indigenous people, where you're on in the day and off at night. And so if you can balance that rhythm, you can actually really support the cell membranes changing from being concentrated in sterols, which actually protect what's gone into the cells, or essential fatty acids, which opens them up and lets nutrition in and lets toxins out. And so it's supporting this rhythm. When it becomes dominant, one or the other, then you become more susceptible, for instance, to viral infections. If you're more anabolic or anaerobic, the hard shell that's built around the cell membrane becomes hard and impenetrable.
Well, it's very interesting. I years ago studied Zen macrobiotics. Mm-hmm. And the idea with that is that you eat what's actually in season. So in the fall, we eat things that we would tend to harvest in fall. In winter, we tend to eat things that are more roots and those types of things. And very much in the spring, I know I'm working on doing a spring cleanse right now, even though spring equinox is past. But typically in the spring and summer, we want to eat things more like fruits and things that are more light and more cleansing. So I know you're a wealth of knowledge, and I always appreciate you coming on the show And what's exciting, more than just being on the show right now, is you're looking at in the near future starting a indigenous medicine class that we could potentially broadcast and document, and you
Right.
could have as actually some media that people could learn some of these things you're talking about. So if you could talk a little bit of what people might experience at this future class and how people can get in touch with you if they're interested.
Sure. We'll go through how you can figure out if you're more hot or cold, simple things that you can shift in your diet without having to incorporate a lot of knowledge about medicinal herbs or anything like that. Simple things that can have major shift on any kind of symptoms that you may have as well. That's kind of the foundation. The one level below that, of course, is your mental, emotional stress in your life. That's what we call the wind. So we have cold, hot, and wind disorder. So we'll go through all kinds of things that you can do to calm the wind, not just substances and foods that you can eat, but also external therapies and certain points, certain ways of heating certain areas of the body that have really specific impacts on the wind of the body and how it's organized and how it keeps things organized for long-term health.
And how would people get a hold of you if they're interested?
You can call 530-812-2566. You can look at my website, indigenousmedicine.net. And I'm always enthusiastic to support any other practitioner that's practicing or teaching indigenous medicine traditions. And you can go to my site, falamritum.org, which is my nonprofit. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. And again, we're having a chat here and part of our health and wellness called Gift of Health here on the show. We are looking at actually spinning that out into its own weekly 30-minute series where we showcase different holistic health practitioners. You know, we live in an age with a lot of stress and a lot of environmental toxins, and it's always nice if we can give ourselves the gift of health by empowering ourselves with the knowledge and the tools of how to live a higher quality of life. So again, thanks for being on the show, and
Thank you.
Look forward to your Indigenous medicine class. And nice round of applause for Mr. Douglas D. Becker, everybody.
Thank you.
Great. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to have our next guest on the arts and culture part of the show with Davin Infinity, and he's an amazing visionary artist. I mean, he works in so many realms we can't even begin to express it in the few minutes that we have, but he'll be on the show next. But before we do that, let's dig into the musical archive with a piece of music by Mike Shapiro that he did as a little segue between sections. And we'll be back in just a minute with more here on the Golden Road live streamed TV show.
It's a golden road TV show. Yes, it's a golden road TV show. It's a Golden Road TV show. .com.
It's great to be back on the show. And so, representing arts and culture, I want to take us into the realm, as Michael mentioned, of revolutions and renaissance. These are the areas that I have been attracted attracted
Follow the
towards
golden road.
studying,
Follow
researching,
the golden road.
traveling the world,
Follow.
experimenting with practices and techniques. And for me, to look at the ancient future, which is a lot about what the show's about, learning from our past and moving towards a brighter future, but being individually and through communities, the bridge of knowledge between the past and the future. So what I want to do tonight is share 20 years of work and start off with how this realm opened up, this attraction, this great attractor towards revolution and a new renaissance. So if we could have the imagery, that would be great. Awesome. So let's go back to 2007. I founded the Awakening Freedom Foundation, and above and beyond, it was a move towards having an open source library online that covered the grand knowledge of the past and the future insight, driving us forward towards a equitable future, a future that works for 100% of humanity, including all the flora and fauna on this beautiful planet. And so as we'll see on the next slide, I built this library, I built a foundation and a giant network, and I got access to great libraries like the Buckminster Fuller Institute. And then I started working with some new courses that were coming through, and they were more of channeling my Renaissance edge and my higher self, my connection to the great wisdom traditions. So courses like the Awakened Avatar, which dealt with looking at personal growth and towards life mastery and how actually we evolve our collective intelligence into embodied states of the avatar and the bodhisattva. These are earth guardians who are here with high energy resonance to protect the planet and to serve a bright future. During this whole journey, I was really fascinated with traveling the world. I have never felt truly at home as an American born as much as I did traveling to other cultures, learning their language, learning their rituals, learning their embodied states and how they deal with geography and geomancy and how they connect to the art of storytelling. So I tried to travel to as many countries as I could. I'm up to 55 right now, going to centers where they're practicing permaculture, where they're practicing innovation and futurism, where they're practicing collective intelligence, where they're dealing with water technologies, and really experimenting with how architecture, how experience, how meritocracy, how they can game their lives to really up-level and perform at their best while being in support of something outside of their ego, into the collective wisdom of the group, the dynamic governance of the group. How do we make decisions, and how do we navigate the past and the lessons with the trauma of being on a planet that's been colonized, indoctrinated, where mass genocide and war proliferation is the going on story, the history, and move towards a sacred union with the future that brings in people that often haven't had a voice or even had voting rights or clean water on this planet. And so on the next slide, what we're going to check out is my first few steps into working with collective wisdom was to learn about the divine feminine and filming amazing Eros tantric videos and a bunch of water births and a conscious conception, and animating and researching this profound knowledge as it takes on the roles of the mother and father, the son, the divine child, how we can return to the source, how the evolution of divine nectar and the power of the goddess and Amrita in our ecstatic, sensual, empowered body. And what does it relate to birth? The birth of supernovas and planets, all the way down into human birth, and the birth of a renaissance, and the death of the old patriarch through revolution. Truly, the neogenesis of birth. What I discovered was there are these stages of creation, how intelligent light and energy and matter and gases form planets. And as they cool, flora and fauna, right? The plants and animals, and the biophilia, the living systems. And now we have this creature, this beast, the king and queen on top of the food chain, kind of running the show here. But what is our human potential if we're not connected to a unified field, and if there's a driving hierarchy instead of a holarchy? If we're working with extraction culture instead of regenerative culture? All the themes that Golden Road and here what we do at the Hub, what we're really getting down to is we need to leave extraction culture ASAP and move towards a regenerative culture that allows us to thrive. And so I designed these graphics and these models and these visual language holodecks, these templates that have allowed people to really understand through visual language and through research what our human potential is. So if you look at like the cellular, the mammalian, how we give life and how we birth these systems within our body all the way towards transcending the planetary culture, right, from nation state empires to planetary, and we move into the galactic resonance, the galactic intelligence, working more towards the omnicentric universal intelligence. So the 9 ways of evolution is also a pretty renowned journey that's been mapped. It's up there with the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, that integral philosophers and Renaissance people use so we can actually drop our egos and our narcissism as a human species and become holarchy, become planetary centric instead of human centric. Also looking at how have we evolved on this planet? How have we metamorphosized, right? From nomadic hunters and gatherers to settling in our beautiful Indus valleys, right? With the water and the gardening in harmony. And so to move from nomadic to being agricultural and then building cities and then technology and then information and then innovation, what would be the phase that we evolve into after that? Some are saying it's a unified spiritual sense where our technologies and our abilities through embodiment are actually all merged into a singularity. And it's going to look a little bit different than the transhumanism singularity perspective, but it's going to be just as powerful. And I think it's going to develop a lot of new types of investment and governance models. But what really struck me on this life quest journey was looking at how laws, like the natural laws of the universe, represent our archetypal journey, the drama that we're on with this planetary transition. We're moving through a great shift, and we're in a pandemic. We're in a phase of crisis where, we had the climate crisis, and then we had the COVID crisis, and then a year later we had the Capitol crisis, right, with the insurrection. So 3 years in a row, crisis has been blasted millions of times throughout the media. Climate crisis, COVID crisis. But what it represents is our ability to not breathe in alignment with the resonance of being alive. We are not connected to the living systems. We've somehow train wrecked the Titanic into an iceberg, and we are not sure if there are enough lifeboats to get us out of possibly a mass extinction. But to understand these cycles, you can actually drop your ego a bit and learn that life and death are beautiful, unified ways of understanding, just like Douglas was talking about the sun and moon and the heat and becoming a Solarian culture, but understanding the gravity that comes with the moon and with being in a hierarchy of a solar system where we get to be in this beautiful earth that can give life in a Goldilocks type of system. And so as we kind of transform from birth into maturity, into our teen years, and we hopefully learn to mature and become parents and learn how to respect our elders, you're going to see that your own personal journey, whether you're an artist or a culture designer, if you're working with arts and culture, the greatest tool you can understand is that yourself can spiral out, as you see here in this phi ratio, into your partner, into your local community, into your global nation, into the planetary, and then go into a larger understanding of what the galactic and the universal intelligence is actually beckoning from you. And then you spiral back into yourself as a new awakened being with a higher level of understanding what unified principles are and how to be in resonance, how to be embodied in that state, that dreamlike lucid state of the avatar, where you are able to work with all physical dimensions as well as your multidimensional aspect, your intuition, your psychic foresight. And that is how we're going to really bridge arts into culture. Now, if you run in circles of groups like I do, the term New Earth comes up a lot. So New Earth, it's kind of a generic term, but what it's actually representing is a state of being that we can enter. Starhawk wrote about it in The Fifth Sacred Thing. There's also teachings in more of the metaphysical or New Age community that talks about this New Earth, where all of these souls come together in resonance and they're able to work with the life support systems, but also work with creative energy and tools and technology on a whole new level. And so I've been mapping out these courses and academies I've been creating and self-publishing 20 full-color books and directing a whole bunch of films. Because what it's taught me is storytelling is the art form where we get to connect together. We all get to help each other through the trauma of our own stories and through the drama of our higher resonance fields, and actually come into this New Earth frequency where love, beauty, and wisdom, all the intelligence we've ever known about, that can never be lost. No Library of Alexandria, burning all the books, can ever lose that innate wisdom. And as we step into these fifth dimensional frequency and work with the higher dimensions even above that, what you're going to understand is that art and culture and society that binds it all is actually a work in progress. It's a story unfolding, and we get to reverse engineer the future that we want to world build and gamify. So you might be asking yourself, wow, this guy's been on quite a journey, and I'm not sure I understand everything he's saying about. So now I would like to invite you to maybe ponder, where is it that you are called to go on your life quest? What places have you seen images of, or maybe a documentary, that are attracting you to step into a new way of understanding the world? So right here, this Local Earth 2.0 tour I did with an organization, Local Earth, we went to all these amazing places in America like Biosphere 2.0 and Arcosanti and the Earthship Institute. And we looked at these inventors and these communities who are creating new worlds of being, but also bringing in research, ways that we can understand the needs of the people that are not having their basic needs met. And we can design communities that become collabs, incubators of the highest technology that can be disseminated and decentralized throughout a global platform. As Buckminster Fuller called it, the world game. And Designing the New World was another course I created with a dear friend, Shiloh Boss. It was about helping us understand the creative potential of becoming futurist design thinkers, and how culture is built on those who are able to think up, envision, prototype, research, get evaluation and feedback tested out, and then get their projects funded. And so to design and build the new world, we have to be in resonance with our intuition and with our ability to understand our own unique aspect to merge the masculine and feminine within. So I was doing some presentations about the goddess and the divine feminine through the eyes of the divine masculine, and working on 75 projects with divine feminine leaders and entrepreneurs, as well as hundreds of projects with the divine masculine and Men of the Code and Mankind Project. I learned that the key in the Western world that we're missing is initiation and rites of passage. And you see that in our youth. They are trigger happy. They are going through a very traumatic state, especially with the pandemic. And the anxiety and the suicidal thoughts are all based around this gender imbalance and this racial inequality and this basically lack of opportunities that come back to the fact that we live in an extraction culture that preaches scarcity and indoctrinates us with scarcity and extraction models. So how does this relate to the Golden Road, our beautiful state of California, the Sacramento Watershed, right? All these things we're stepping up to act towards here at the Hub and through Golden Road TV. Well, that's when we talk about the resilience of California, a state that is golden in many ways and has one of the greatest creative economies and intellectual magic and beautiful divine feminine energy and beautiful nature. And now we're working towards the indigenous restorative justice. We have the largest indigenous population of all the states here. And we have now somebody in the White House with Deb Haaland who's about ready to activate these solutions through the indigenous perspective. But yet our state, our golden state, is on fire, and it's teething with corruption and poisons and pollution and broken economies and markets that make it very hard to even survive, nonetheless soak up the beautiful nature of the golden vibes here in California. So what I am dedicated to is working with this resilience models, and that's what you saw there, mapping out California's history and its legacy and its trauma with the indigenous people and the mining of gold and the extracting of resources. And how do we create a state that can once again become a land of dreams and a land of opportunity and represent that golden future and bridge the ancient past with the future? California, Califia, the goddess that it was named after, these are powerful metaphors and archetypes to work with. And so I hope that my mythology, my hero's journey, my life quest has inspired you to give back locally, but also dream big and work up this game of planetary and universal, gamified love, beauty, and wisdom, and channel it through the arts and culture, and make sure that you're ready for a future that you never were guaranteed, but your inner higher self has almost always promised you. So please, step forth with courage and action and dream big, and let me promise you, there's a golden future awaiting you. Thank you.
The Water Protector Tour 2021 is an alliance of individuals, businesses, decision makers, and members of indigenous communities. The tour is dedicated to organizing, strategizing, and actualizing solutions around our bioregional issues like environmental toxins, mismanagement, and privatization. The tour will be focused on the Sacramento River watershed, from the glacial waters of Mount Shasta to the unique estuary of the Sacramento River Delta. The tour starts on March 20th with World Water Day and goes throughout the year, featuring over a half dozen different forums, roundtables, and live streamed events. More information at waterprotectortour.org. Wow, and another big round of applause for Davin Infinity. Incredible presentation, bringing us into the ancient future, and just really glad and honored to be collaborating with someone who really sees the big picture and actually does the little things along the way to help usher in a new innovative way of being. Our next guest is also someone who has been doing this for a long time and actually has begun a journey with myself to do a series of videos called We the People that really help to look back at the formation of the United States and there's many different aspects of that, from escaping the imperialism of England and all the different aspects of that. But he's helping to unravel the mystery that many of us have never really looked into, and also the history, and to understand where we are in this place of time and space, and our relationship to the Constitution, and our relationship to people and our communities. So our next guest, I'd like to introduce part of the Peace and Justice part of the show, Dennis Ward from the House of Mcfadden. So welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Wow, we look so tropical tonight.
I
we're
know,
ready to head
yeah.
to the Caribbean.
It's a couple of hard acts to follow. These young guys are amazing. I mean, I just was impressed to no end, and I just appreciate being here. And it's interesting because so many of the things that he talked about basically are what our forefathers were envisioning when they established this country, and hopefully the direction that we would go, and how we've been diverted off the main track into some place that is not very pleasant right now.
So we've been working on this series. I think we're 3 or 4 episodes into it. But in the time that we have, why did people leave England? Why did people leave Europe? And why did they come to America, also known as Turtle Island by the indigenous people? And why did they do that? And what was their hope of what they would find here?
Well, for most of them, they had no idea what they were going to find here. They found what they called a wilderness, which was, in fact, probably one of the most intensely managed land masses on the planet in terms of the care that was directed at the country by the Native American people, from the Canadians all the way into Mexico and Central America. But they were fleeing religious persecution, mostly from the churches. They were fleeing the monarchies because the monarchies of Europe were very oppressive at that time. And they were looking for a new opportunity, just like, you know, we as a people have migrated around the country, around the world. You know, it's like, oh, I heard that, you know, it's really nice in Costa Rica, so let's go check it out. And so it was just a promise of a better future for themselves and their families. And so when you've endured hundreds of years of tyranny, especially for my ancestors who came from Ireland and Scotland, depending on who the British were persecuting at the time, was whether the Mcfaddens were in Scotland or whether they were in Northern Ireland. And so it's just a matter of looking to the future and looking to how can I make a better world for me and my family.
And of course, we've seen the colonial model, the colonialization of many parts of the world extending into parts of Africa and Asia. So when people got here, I know we've talked a lot about these processes of the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Incorporation, the Constitution. Can you give us a very quick timeline of how these things played out and why they played out?
Well, a long string of abuses, as to quote Thomas Jefferson. It had gotten in the 1750s and 60s, the oppression from the King of England in the colonies, specifically in terms of the monetary system, the judicial system. The colonies were trying to implement a system of equal exchange, which is one of the things that led to Roger Sherman's amazing, eloquent little brief book called A Caveat Against Injustice, and one of the only man who signed the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. He was from Connecticut, and he was someone who believed in an honest monetary system and an honest means of exchange, and that was his primary focus in the Constitutional Convention. And we can thank Roger Sherman for Article 1, Section 10, where it talks about only gold and silver coin being lawful money of the United States.
So it really started with a Declaration of Independence by the colonists here. And I know for many indigenous people, the colonizers, even though there's a wide swath of varying parts of that history and how that unfolded and how we went from the original people coming here, to some of them even working with Native people, to what happened through what we see even in this area with the gold rush and the colonialization and the westward expansion and all the not so savory parts of history. But it really started with this Declaration of Independence. And then what happened when that occurred?
Well,
There was pushback, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, of course, yeah, there was a pushback. Yeah, England invaded the United States and declared war, and we had basically about 5 years of war from April of 1775 up to about 1781, when the majority of the hostilities finally ended. And then the treaties of peace with the King of England in 1782 and 1783. And the Declaration, I sort of did a synopsis of it in our discussion, is that the Declaration of Independence, you have to look at it as sort of a blueprint, the blueprint that Thomas Jefferson drafted to establish the United States of America, to establish our country, and how that led to the Articles of Confederation, which I consider to be the foundation of our republic, even though it was a fairly quickly drafted document by the Continental Congress. It established what we needed to proceed through the whole war process. And then at the end of the cessation of hostilities, we had the call for a convention to draft a constitution, to make an agreement, a compact between the newly freed colonies, i.e. now states, and to form a federal government to deal with the rest of the world. And so the Constitution I consider to be the structure, the house that our founding fathers built for our country, for this republic. And when they were finished with that, they realized that, we need a roof to protect the people. And so that's when Madison and the others decided that we need to have a Bill of Rights styled after the English Bill of Rights. So that led to the Bill of Rights of 1791.
Fascinating. I mean, it's so funny because we were all given these narratives in class and in school, but from a very specific perspective. So it's been really enlightening, actually, to spend the time with you working on this We the People series, to relearn these things, to learn about their real meaning and the motivations behind it, and even more relevantly, in a time now where there's so much talk about freedom, of human rights, of the constitutionality of things, of people rising up against the government, people, all these different things, the political divisiveness. How do these processes, these documents, the formation of our country, how is that relevant in your eyes? And I will say that maybe your views might not reflect my views, and that's a big part of the show. We're here not to pontificate or say that we have the truth, but I know with your wisdom and your research and your background that you have a lot of useful insights and resources and tools for people. How is that relevant to what we're dealing with right now in our country, and And how can people tap into knowing more about that so it can become a resource and a tool?
Wow. How much time
In
do I
30
have left?
seconds.
30 seconds, okay. Well, I would say that the founding fathers looked at the situation that they were in and, to the best of their ability, drafted the Constitution looking forward into the future for their children and their grandchildren. And how it's relevant today is we've moved so far away from those principles of self-governance. You know, why do we need to have 3 or 4 levels of government telling us how to live our lives? Well, I live in the city of Grass Valley, so I guess I got to listen to the city and the county and the state and the federal government. Well, no, you don't. There's a thing called sovereignty, and there's a thing called being responsible, and that's what, you know, I believe it was James Madison that said that the Constitution was drafted for a moral people. Well, what's a moral people? It's people who know how to live responsibly and who know how to govern themselves and take care of their families and their friends and their communities. And it's about having a sense of real integrity when it comes to looking down the road. You know, I'm not going to be here forever. And I have sons, and they may have sons, and a lot of us have children, grandchildren. And so they looked to form the best way to limit the government, to bind I believe it was Jefferson said something about the Constitution was designed to bind the government with the chains of the Constitution. It's to limit government. It's to limit their power. It's to limit their ability to impose the type of tyranny that they had experienced with the King of England.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a deep rabbit hole to explore.
Oh boy, it sure is.
And again, it's really been an honor to get to spend time with you, to get to know you as a friend, to have you part of the Hub community and your advisorship along with Marcia and all the work that you've been doing, and to learn more about actually a big part of our history here of the formation of the United States. So I look forward to more discourse, maybe having you on the show as we make way towards the ending of this incredible saga of video production and storytelling about We the People. And I just wanted to thank you for taking a few moments to be on the show. It's always a pleasure and an honor. And I look forward to our trip to Costa Rica soon.
Absolutely. I got the shirt ready to go, buddy.
All right. So again, if you're just tuning in, you're watching The Golden Road. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, and The Golden Road is all about bridging the past with today for a better tomorrow. And nice round of applause, please, for Dennis Ward from the House of Mcfadden.
Thank you,
I envisioned you with the big
the big headdress.
Yes, we're going to do that one. We got
Okay.
that. We're having a party coming up soon.
Oh,
and
next time I'll wear my kilt.
There we go. We have to
Okay.
make sure the camera angle's okay. Though.
Right, yeah,
All right.
exactly.
We don't want to
Keep my
get
legs
censored by YouTube or something crazy. And I do want to just acknowledge, I want to thank Brandon. This is his second show with us, helping to do the tech side. And I really appreciate his attention to details, him showing up in support of community media and really doing a brilliant job. So thank you, Brandon, so much for.
Thank you, Brandon.
And Telestream and Wirecast that give us this great technology. So let's go over now, because part of We the People is all of us taking responsibility for creating the solution and the changes that we want to see in our communities. We saw a brief water protector video, and we're going to go over now to the Sacramento River Watershed Project video. And this is something, a nonprofit organization that I'm doing, partnered with Bob Saunders, in order to take on a lot of these big water issues, specifically in our bioregion, our watershed, from the glacial waters of Mount Shasta down into the Sacramento River Delta, which is also under siege by the proposed Delta Tunnel Conveyance Project. And I'll mention at the end of the show our big Water Palooza event coming up May 21st to 23rd If you'd like more information, waterpaloozafestival.com. But let's go over now to the Sacramento River Watershed Project video, and we'll be back with our final guest from Strategic Campaigns, all the way from the Big Apple here to the little town on the hill here in the Sierras. We'll be back in just a minute with Mr. Steve Nathan. I hope you're enjoying the show.
The Sacramento River Watershed Project is a nonprofit organization dedicated to preservation, education, and regeneration of our most precious resource, water. The organization works in a dozen counties in the watershed, ranging from the glacial waters of Mount Shasta to the unique estuary of the Sacramento River Delta. We are committed to focusing on three main issues: stopping and removing environmental toxins, including herbicides, pesticides, microplastics, and pharmaceuticals, working with decision makers to prevent mismanagement, and working to prevent privatization and the devastating impact to our communities and the environment. For more information, go to www.sacramentoriverwatershedproject.org or call 530-362-8264.
Thanks, Michael, for having me on again. I really enjoy working here at the Hub with everybody here, the things that we get to see and that I get to see that not everybody does. There's a world of difference between mainstream media and the media that we're working to present here, and it's just a pleasure to be able to be a part of this. Listening to Dennis and to Davin, it made me realize that those who ignore or forget history are doomed to repeat it. And I'm all of a sudden realizing how many of the same problems that we ran into in terms of why we left the rule of the English country and kings and monarchy is happening again. That our government is not operating in a manner that our founding fathers intended it, I believe. And right now, you talked about all the things that you hear people talking about, and I hear a lot of people talking about revolution. And I believe there's another way out. I believe that we can have a renaissance. Both are bloody. Renaissance isn't quite as bloody. And I believe that that's the way for us to go. I believe if we start that the minute we realize that every American citizen has their basic needs met, their thinking will come from a very different place. What if we chose to focus on making sure that those core basic needs are delivered to all our citizens? As a result, we at Strategic Campaigns have made it our mission to bring common sense, which isn't all that common apparently, communication, collaboration, and cooperation to a world that desperately needs it. Let's step back a minute. Let's take a macro view of where we are and what we and many others see as missings, and how there might be better solutions that than what we are presently being offered. Then we can take a micro view on all of the individual issues. Right now, it occurs that the game being played is a zero-sum game. It's set up for there to be winners and losers, and apparently more losers than winners. We spend an awful lot of money and resources on weapons. These weapons are then used to dominate and eliminate threats and/or competition. This happens in many areas of influence, not just the military-industrial complex, who is behind a good portion of this, but as we dig deeper, we'll see that there are others utilizing the same tactics. Let's look at banking and finance. What is money? It's a construct. It's a tool for the exchange of value. It used to be backed by gold. Not so much anymore, can't be said. So how is it valued, and how do governments get to print what they need, and how is that valued? And that value, is it a true measure of what it's worth? How is that determined? Who makes these decisions? The banking industry and the cabals that rule them. What about the new digital currencies? What is backing them? How is that value being created or exchanged? What if we're exchanging how we valued action? What if we valued protecting the planet and its inhabitants more than we valued destroying it or them or us? Our healthcare industry is actually a disease management system. It has little to do with healthcare. It's about what insurance and pharmaceutical companies decide what they will and won't provide, and how much of the pie they take before we get treated. Most of the reasons for inequity are due to agreements being out of balance. Those with money and power have changed the rules and the laws and agreements to their benefits. But these are just agreement fields. Perhaps people are unaware that they can be renegotiated and changed. They can. Without a doubt, the biggest obstacle to creating a world that works for, quote unquote, all of us is corruption. Those with the power certainly do not want to give it up. Yet for man to succeed, power must be shared equitably. And yet, while this has always been the case, it's usually violated. Let's move forward with how we might proceed from here, assuming we want our government to work for us, not for whoever they've been working for. It would also be advantageous if government was focused on being competent. What if we negotiated a new deal? We must recognize that citizenship is not about individual rights. There are responsibilities and obligations that we all have as citizens of the United States, as well as being citizens of the planet. Rarely do we hear about this, and it seems that people would rather thump their chests and focus on their own rights, not realizing that their rights end the instant that they infringe on somebody else's. What about the rights of the planet or its inhabitants? We've not been very good stewards. We have not learned to live in harmony with those we share it with. Much of our methodology has been extractive and purely profit-driven, to the point where we're on the verge of extinction. We're on the verge of environmental collapse, all because people want to make more profit. It doesn't work that way. It seems they operate in a scarcity mindset, and they hoard resources for profit rather than learn how to live regeneratively and sustainably. What if we chose to value protecting the rights of the planet with the clarity of essential health for our children and our children's children? There are many already doing some of this work. There are many people waking up to the fact that what we have been doing isn't sustainable and hasn't worked as planned. What if we change the dynamic? Let's explore new options that may be more effective at accomplishing a world that works. But in order to do that, we must be able to communicate with each other. Let's restart the conversation from a solutions-oriented perspective and context. No more can't. Instead, how can we? This is your invitation to join the conversation. We at Strategic Campaigns believe we all do better when we all do better. And good planets are hard to find. We have the ability to change the world. The thing we resist most is change. Yet those who adapt to change best succeed most. I can be reached, and we can be reached at strategiccampaigns.org or steve@strategiccampaigns.org. Please make being a part of this conversation a priority. Our world is gradually slipping out of our grasp and falling away from us. There's much to be done. it's time for us to take the responsibility we have as citizens and as parents, and to look after those that we share the planet with, so that we all get to enjoy this planet, the blue marble. Thank you.
All right, well, not much can be said after that. Another brilliant presentation by Mr. Steve Nathan. Really hitting a chord here this afternoon. You know, again, in regenerative communities, in resilient and sustainable communities, the importance that arts and culture play in envisioning a new future and to inspire the human spirit and to bring more joy and more creativity. The importance of health, of indigenous medicine, of drawing from these ancient traditions, and the simplicity of that our food is medicine, our attitude is medicine, and these are all part of our quality of life. The importance of this whole realization about the role of the Constitution in our current discourse and all the things we see playing out across the country. And again, Mr. Steve Nathan just really putting it in a poetic exclamation point there at the end. So thanks for watching the Golden Road TV show. Again, I'm your host, Michael DiMartino. We broadcast live every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Sometimes we go a little bit later. You know, we take some creative license. We like to live outside the lines sometimes. And for those of you who know me, you might know that to be true. So come and join and help synergize here at the Nevada County Resilience and Innovation Hub. Every night of the week we have meetings. Monday we do onboarding for people who are interested in actually collaborating and doing something besides just complaining or putting posts on social media. Every Tuesday from 4 to 6 we have our community media group followed by this show. On Wednesdays, we're involved in a lot of other types of activities, and currently we'll be starting up our Thursday health and wellness group. And there's plenty happening here at the Hub. Our monthly Alchemy Health and Wellness a meeting that we do as far as a clinic offering holistic health support for our community, and lots more stuff. But there's only so much, you know, a dozen of us can do here. It's up to you to take an active part, to wake up and to decide what your superpower is and to activate it right now. And since we are live, we want to let you know about the Waterpalooza event, which is coming up May 21st through 23rd. It'll be an incredible event in the Sacramento River Delta. If you want more information, go to waterpaloozafestival.com. This is a conscious, safe, outdoor event, and it's a way to help fund the Soul of the Delta film, to get more synergy and connectivity with the community there, and also let other people know about the huge privatization and water grab that's potentially happening right under our noses. A lot of people aren't aware. So if you're interested, just check out the Delta Tunnel Conveyance Project. But come to Waterpalooza. We'll be having an event on a pirate ship. We'll be having a garden party, a Prohibition era event, lots of great discourse, and more building up our community's awareness, and actually putting our awareness into action around tangible solutions. So once again, thanks for watching the show. We'll be back next week. You know, subscribe, like, share the show. This isn't just more information online. This is something we're doing to help inspire community engagement, and you're part of that. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week here on the Golden Road.
Follow the golden road, follow the golden road, follow, 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 follow the golden road. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show. You'll find it is a whiz of a show, if ever a show there was. It's arts and culture and history, environment, health, technology, and peace and justice, science, just because of the meaningful things it does. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show.